Hello everyone, this is the Casual Fan and welcome to the Casual F1 podcast. This time around, once again, Wimbo, for now, I think you guys might be aware of Wimbo. He was a part of the qualifying watch along that we did just recently. So this time around, I have him here for the Casual F1 podcast. Well, Wimbo is Dutch. He's a huge Max Verstappen fan. So this podcast will be, I think you can see it from the title, it will be themed around Max Verstappen, and we will talk about 3 things that Max Verstappen needs to do to be considered the greatest of all time in Formula 1. So first of all, I'll give the floor to Wimbo. Wimbo, you can just give a brief introduction and
Okay, hi everybody.
greetings.
I'm Wimbo. I'm 46 years old. I started a YouTube channel about a year ago just to see what it was like, and I just love making content. I've quite a bit of following on Twitter under the same name, Wimbo F1, and I make a pro Max Verstappen, pro Red Bull content. It doesn't mean I'm hating on all the other teams, because I actually have a great love for Ferrari and basically all the other teams. But yeah, I do find myself scrapping a lot with Team LH, but all in good fun. I've had people on my podcast that are Team LH, and yeah, it's to be taken with a pinch of salt.
So Wimbo, let's begin with our podcast. First of all, before we get into Max Verstappen being the GOAT or becoming the GOAT, I think the first thing I want to talk about is a bit of a hot topic that I saw on Twitter, a bit of a discussion that you had with a fellow user. Who is to blame for Red Bull's dominance in this new ground effect era? So shoot, what's your view?
Okay, well, I think blame is a big word, because I think there's an awful lot in place to have a great season, to have everything that we're looking for. It just hasn't come to fruition yet. In the old days, people could outspend other teams. In the old days, people had the strongest engine, and then they used party modes during qualifying, and they could turn the engine up a notch during races as well. It was all so far stretched out of each other. The teams were so stretched, from the worst team to the best, that it didn't improve racing. But all these things that are implemented now through the FIA, I think they're working because we have the closest grid ever. Now, the only one that stands out is Max Verstappen himself. And to me, that's not a big surprise, because ever since his debut season in 2015, he's been voted number 4 best driver by the team principals. The year after that, he was second best. The year after that, he was second best. He was second best all these years, even when Rosberg was champion. Rosberg was P3, Max was P2, and Hamilton was P1. Until Max won his first championship in 2021 and in 2022. And those years, he was voted best driver by the team principals. Now, these guys, they know what they're talking about. So, I lost my trail of thought here.
Line of thought. Yeah.
Max Verstappen is just a step above everybody else, and it's not a surprise because he's been that good and that consistent for so long already. So you can't blame Max, you can't blame the FIA, you can't blame Red Bull because they do the fastest pit stops, they have the best strategy, they've got a smooth running team. So the only thing that's left to blame is the competition themselves. They have failed building a car that is just as good as the Red Bull's car is. And especially Ferrari and Mercedes, who dumped their previous concept only a month or 6 weeks ago. Yeah, especially in a cost cap area, that's lethal. But nobody forced them to go out with a bathtub side pod or no side pod. Nobody forced them. This is what they thought would work, and it didn't. So yeah, the other
somewhere down the line, yeah, I understand what you're
saying.
saying. I where I somewhat so basically you're pinning the blame on the teams, right?
Yeah.
Now somewhere down the line that's true. And there's one more thing that I'll say. Even if on the current grid, if every team has the same car and it only came down to the operations and the driver, basically the execution and the driver, I think Red Bull will still win the race and the championship. And keeping that aside, now coming to the main thing, I think the issue that comes up here is, I think it's something that I even mentioned to you earlier as well. The issue is the gap that is there between Red Bull and the chasing pack. Now that is, I'm specifically talking about Red Bull in the hands of Max Verstappen, not Sergio, who seems to be underperforming, who probably tried to shoot too close to the stars. Anyhow, the problem is when the gap is this big, especially in a set of regulations that was supposed to bring the field close, it shows one thing, and that is that the regulations that were created, they had a singular solution in place. That singular solution was something that Adrian Newey was able to crack, but no other team was able to get that done. Now, one thing I'll say, and maybe it might come out as something where I'm probably denigrating what Newey has done, but there is an element of it. What if Ferrari or what if Mercedes would have cracked the code and Red Bull would not have done that? We would be looking at the same thing. The thing is, ultimately these technical regulations, they are a puzzle, and they are basically a problem that is given to the teams, and they have to find a solution to it. Earlier, in 1990s, 1980s, what used to happen was there were varied solutions in place that could be implemented by different teams. Cars used to look different at that point in time. Now almost every car looks the same. Every car will look like Red Bull next season. I think we all know that. But the thing is, this 2-year advantage that Red Bull has and the command over this concept, I am slightly worried that we might not see any team catch up with Red Bull even next season. Because they've nailed these regulations. I don't think any other team has done that. Any other team understands how to properly get the maximum out of these cars. They still don't, other than Red Bull.
Yeah, but if we're talking about who's to blame for that, then it's the teams.
I think it comes down to the FIA. I am probably differing on that because, again, their motive was correct.
Well, their motive was to get rid of the wake behind the cars, and this is something the teams have been asking for years.
Yeah, they've done that.
Two cars following each other. I have to drop back to 2 seconds because my tires are overheating, my car's overheating, and they tried to fix that by pushing the wake of the car over the other car. The
turbulence is gone, basically.
Yes,
the turbulent air is gone,
and they succeeded in that. But
True.
Now the cars are getting more advanced, and there's more dirty air than there was last year already.
Yeah.
So the FIA should restrict them even more again.
I think
still they're putting in little thingies on wings that make
that needs to be stopped.
That needs to be stopped. Well,
yeah.
Otherwise it wouldn't work. But the
Exactly.
FIA has never promised with these regulations to have a close title fight. They've never promised that. No.
They did.
No, they
when
promised
it came to
closer racing, but not a close title fight. And they already knew that a team like Haas couldn't develop with their infrastructure, couldn't develop the car the way a team like Mercedes or Ferrari could develop the car, because they don't have the infrastructure yet. But with the cost cap in place, teams, instead of, almost going bankrupt, they're actually making a profit now, which helps them build their infrastructure up. This is why
True.
James Vowles is asking for, if they're allowed to spend a little bit more to get better buildings and everything.
Yeah, I think
He's trying, but I've never read that somebody from the FIA said we're going to have a close title fight like 2021 with these regulations.
No, 2021 was a special case.
Yes.
That is something that rarely happens.
It's almost like with the way the direction of the whole vibe in F1 is going, is that if Red Bull's wise, they should just tone it down a little bit. They should put on that older wing that made them a little bit slower, and then make Max fight for the wins more. But that's not how they operate. They just want to get the maximum out of each weekend. There's no pegging down the car. This is what Mercedes did in 2014, 2015. They ran their engines at idle mode to prevent the FIA stepping in.
Yeah, they used to do that.
But Red Bull doesn't. They just want to smash it out of the park. And
Red Bull does as well.
If anything, it'll motivate the other teams to do better, and that's what needs to happen.
That's there. I think the question that comes in here is, okay, by the way, the regulations, these were the things that were not promised but that were proposed that are going to happen with these regulations. First is the shrinking of the field spread. That is basically the gap between the first to the 10th team or the last team. That has happened. The second was the cars would be much easier to race. Again, second thing has happened. It's the third thing that was there, which was in coherence with the first point, the first promise, that the field spread would be smaller. The problem is one team has nailed these regulations, and I think this is actually a byproduct of having a very restricted regulations where you have only one solution. Whichever team is able to find that perfect spot, hit the magic spot, it will tend to dominate. And that's what Red Bull is doing.
But see if there was 2 or 3 different ways to run that car and it was allowed,
it will cost more.
Well, that's another thing. I think Red Bull would knock it out of the park as well, because Adrian Newey is just the best aerodynamicist on the grid, and he's been. How consistent Max was with what I just described.
Yeah. Since 2019, I think he's been the best driver.
Yeah, but in 2015, as a fucking 18-year-old kid, he was put in that, or that was 2016. He started winning races and everything.
Yeah.
Another thing can be said about Adrian Newey at Red Bull. Even if they had the worst engine with Renault, they still managed to win races because their chassis was so good. Adrian Newey has always built the. They've always built the best cars.
I disagree. 2014, 2015, 2016, even 2017 to an extent, Mercedes was the best overall car, and I'm not even talking about the engine. Even in terms of the aerodynamic performance, Mercedes was leaps and bounds ahead.
But that all worked together. Mercedes.
Agreed.
Mercedes could sort of focus on the straights, because they had a powerful engine. It made traction much better, so that they could come out of a corner.
Everything was perfect. Yeah, I agree.
And Red Bull chose. It's like, oh, we're not going to beat Mercedes. Let's win a few races. Let's build a car. Let's set it up to win at least Monaco and 2 other street tracks like Malaysia and Singapore.
Malaysia is not a street track.
Malaysia
has 2 humongous streets, and I think Max won in 2018.
It hasn't been on the calendar for a while, so that's why
I miss Malaysia. I miss Malaysia.
Sorry, people.
And yeah, I think there are some things that you're actually correct about, but the thing is, okay, this is something that I'll keep it to myself because I'm doing a video on this. I've already recorded it. I hope I get the time. Okay. Let's pull back the curtain a bit. Adrian Newey has been part of Formula One since when?
Well, I'm reading his book, but
1988-89.
okay.
His first team was Leighton House. His second team was Williams. The first time he won the title with Williams was in 1992. He won the title with Williams from 1992 till 93. From 94 to 95, Michael and Braun beat him. Then we had 96, 97, another couple of titles with Newey. Then 98, 99, again Newey, but with McLaren. He switched teams. Then from 2000 to 2004, Newey didn't win. 2005, 6, again it wasn't Newey. There's a reason behind it. And the reason is, okay, Newey brings success to a Formula One team. But Newey alone is not a winning formula. And that is something that people don't understand. You need a classy driver like a Max, a Seb, or earlier you had Mansell and Prost. I think Mansell and put anyone in those cars because that was Newey's magic. In 1992 and 93, the cars that Williams had, it was basically they were in Formula 1, everyone else was in Formula 3000 at that point in time. But ever since Michael retired, because Michael was the guy who was the first one to beat Newey in 94, 95, and then he did that again with Ferrari. What you need at the end of the day is the perfect combination. Newey alone is not going to win you titles, and that is something people really don't understand. I love the fact that they give him credit, but maybe they're giving him too much credit.
No, but he's the first one to say that you shouldn't have technical arrogance. That's one of the things he keeps saying. And
he's very humble.
And another thing he says that the culmination of a driver working with him and the input that he gets from a driver, and then the way the driver executes the new car on track, that's all what makes it a working a prize-winning team.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's got that with Max, and he's even called him the perfect driver at some point.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You can't take away credit from Max or even from Vettel in 2010 to 2013. Drivers made the difference as well.
Yeah.
Anyhow, now we'll get back to the main topic.
Yeah.
Max Verstappen is currently at 41 or 42. How many wins has he got? Something in the line, something on those lines. He has more than 40 wins.
I think
he has more than 40.
45. I think he's got 45.
Wait a minute. I think I'll need to check. I don't think he's in the 40s. Is he in the 40s?
Yes,
or is he in the 30s?
Because Senna had 41. And he leveled that, and then he went over, and then he went over again.
Yes.
He's on 45 because he had, the magical number 44. And then he said, "Oh, I hope I don't get stuck on 44."
Yeah.
So he's got 45.
He's on 45. He's on 45.
Yeah.
So Max Verstappen is on 45 wins right now.
Yeah.
In all likelihood, he's winning his third world championship as well.
Yes.
Fingers crossed. Hopefully nothing untoward happens.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, there have been talks about him being one of the greatest of all time already.
Yeah.
As in, he ranks amongst the likes of Senna, Prost, Lauda, Stewart, Clark, Schumacher, Lewis, Alonso as well. I'll put him in that bracket. But keeping that aside, whether he is one of the greats or not, let's keep it aside. My main question is, he's still 25. Sure, he's talked about the fact that he'll retire when he's 31 or something like that. What does Max need to do? There are 3 things that he needs to do.
Yeah.
3 things, as in 3 things I've thought about, 3 things you've thought about. We'll go through them one by one.
Yeah.
So first of all, we'll start with you.
Okay.
If Max Verstappen has to be considered the greatest of all time, the undisputed greatest of all time,
Mm-hmm.
then what does he need to do?
Okay, well, the first thing he needs to do
First
is...
of all, Wimbo first.
Yes,
First
okay.
things first. Yeah. Before you start, there's one thing I'd like to know first. Who do you think is the greatest of all time right now in Formula One?
Senna.
Okay.
But
Now you can.
for me, the GOAT is more a vibe. Um, the GOAT for me is the romantic side of it. You know,
Yeah.
that man. To me, he encapsulates racing. You know, with all the passion that he brought into it, with
Oh yeah.
with his inability to slow down, with his inability to give away a position, to go for a gap that may or may not be there. Just the whole total. And I don't care how many titles he has. I don't care how many wins he has. And the fact that he lost his life on track probably makes his legend even bigger, because if we see him, you know, go down the slope of,
After this peak.
just worse and worse and worse results, then
Yeah.
it would peter out. So
Yeah.
so he basically, he was still a legend when he lost his life. So
Yeah.
and this is what I have as point one as well. The first thing Max needs to do is retire, and I'm talking retire for more than 5 years, so we can look back at his career and then make up the decision whether he's the ultimate GOAT or not.
Okay.
Because I don't think you can call somebody the GOAT when they're still in an active career. And that's why I wouldn't call Lewis Hamilton or Alonso the GOAT, because Hamilton might get beaten by Russell the next 3 years. You know, this season he can still be overtaken by George Russell, and the next season and the next, you know, and that would sort of
Tarnish his legacy.
Yes, and Alonso, who's been in really bad cars for a long time, but if Aston Martin has a supercar next season and he beats Max Verstappen twice, and he'll end up his career with 4 titles, beating the legendary Max Verstappen, then he might be considered the GOAT of all time. So I think a great driver shouldn't linger, and that's why I totally agree with Max saying, you know, I'm going to go to this far, and then I'm going to run my own team, or I'm going to do Le Mans, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do endurance, because in that way he can prevent what happened to, say, Sebastian Vettel. You know, Sebastian Vettel went from being the boss at Red Bull to trying his best at Ferrari, and then he sort of got
pretty much teetering out at Aston Martin.
He got pushed out by Ferrari themselves because they didn't give him a contract. And then he ended up at Aston Martin, but they weren't competitive. So, you know, he got to a podium and he got taken off because he didn't have enough petrol in his car.
Yeah.
So
that still hurts.
That's basically my my first point, that a GOAT driver needs to retire on a high, and there needs to be enough time passed to overlook the whole career and say, this is what he's done.
Yeah. Interesting. Actually interesting. That's actually a unique point.
Are you surprised?
Yeah.
I thought you asked me to tell you to talk about interesting things here on the podcast.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, who I think is the GOAT, I think I've been very open about it. For me, it's Michael Schumacher. And why he is the GOAT is, I think I've explained it so many times. It's not about the 7 titles. It's about the team with which he won. He won the title with Ferrari. He won the title with Ferrari after the team had not won a title for 20 years. He broke that 20-year drought. Then he retired from the team in 2006. You had Kimi Raikkonen come in. And Kimi Raikkonen basically reaped the rewards of whatever work Michael had done. And he won the title in 2007. 2008, Massa almost won the title. From that point onwards, we are in 2023. Again, a 15-year period where Ferrari has not won the title. In the last 40-45 years, there's been only one driver that has succeeded with that team. And that is why he is the greatest of all time. He pretty much did the impossible. So yeah, enough about Michael. First point, what I think Max needs to do to be considered the GOAT. He needs to beat at least one of his contemporary rivals in a close championship fight. That is the first thing that he needs to do. Because okay, I think he should be able to beat a Charles Leclerc, a Norris, a Russell. I'm slightly doubtful about. Doubtful in the sense I don't think I consider him to be an elite. Something that I considered before the start of the season. And maybe even an Oscar Piastri. If I take all these drivers, I want to see at least one season where it is a hotly contested battle between Max and one of these guys. If he's able to beat them, that is the first thing that I'd want him to do when it comes to reaching that GOAT status. Because that is something Lewis hasn't done, mind you. He hasn't beaten any of his contemporaries in a comparable car. Not even once. And no, 2017, 2018 Ferrari don't count. Yeah, so what do you think?
Yeah, that's also an interesting point. So basically you're saying there's a team that develops so much that they're level with Red Bull. Let's say McLaren. McLaren gets it all done. They have the new wind tunnel, and in 2024 they're getting more podiums and a few wins.
Basically, the 2022 Ferrari without the fuck ups.
And then 2025, McLaren is level with Red Bull. They've reached the plateau. You know, they're level, and then Max and Lando Norris, they have to battle it out.
Or Oscar.
No, Lando. And one race, the McLaren is in favor, and all the other races, Red Bull in favor, and they just battle it out. And you know, some races are won by strategy, and the other races won by luck, and the other ones and then towards the end they're almost level, and we have a close title fight. And then if Max in the last race puts it on pole, doesn't make any mistakes, and he wins, then you consider him a GOAT.
I don't even need him to go to the last race.
Oh.
The point is, you have competition. You have competition from your contemporaries in a comparable car, without the Ferrari fuck-ups. That's a disclaimer.
Well, why don't you count the 21 season in that then?
He's not a contemporary.
What do you mean?
He's not from his generation. Lewis is someone from whom Max has taken the title.
You're sort of excluding Lewis Hamilton because he's a few years older.
Yeah, he's from the previous generation.
Okay.
So Max basically has taken the mantle from the previous generation.
Yeah.
Now he's carrying it. Now he needs to beat someone from his generation.
Yeah, who's
at least once.
24. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, something like that. The current crop, the new guys. So yeah. So
Okay.
Wimbo, yeah.
You want to hear my second one?
Sure, go ahead.
Well, people love statistics.
Yeah.
You know, so he needs to break a few more records, or at least level. You know, if Max retires and he has 99 wins, and Lewis Hamilton has 103, then people would say, well, Lewis has still 4 wins more, so he's better. You know, and if Max retires with 6 championships, people will still say, yeah, well, Schumacher had 7, so he's better. You know, so it needs to at least have 7 titles when he retires.
Yeah.
So to sort of block that out, and then if possible, win 105 races and have like 105 poles. That would be nice too. So at least those arguments are all gone.
I have another one. It's somewhat similar to yours, and it's actually based on statistics only. I want him to have more than 100 race wins. That's all.
Yeah.
Everything else is fine. more than 100 race wins. If he's able to accomplish that, that's all right. I don't 103, 104 again. That comes when we talk about statistics. More often than not, it comes down to the car that you have under you. And even though Alonso has not won a race since 2013, it's been a decade, he's still considered one of the greatest of all time because, again, his level of performance for 20 years, that is something that kind of, it stands out. Not many people do that. And that is something where I think one thing that I want from Max is him securing more than 100 wins. The reason why I'm just keeping this as a benchmark is because Michael had 91, Lewis had 103. Now for Max, it might be a bit easier because the races have increased, the number of races. We have 22 this time, and I think 23, 24, something like that next season as well. So even if he wins roughly 10 races per season, by 2028 he should be able to get that done.
Yeah.
Right? So that is my prerequisite from him, that he needs to win at least 100 races. If he's able to get that done, I don't care about the titles because, again, that is contingent on the car that he has under him. If he's driving a Haas right now, he won't be winning titles.
No.
Right? So that's the whole thing. You tell me, what's your third?
Okay, my third is become a champion with Ferrari or another team.
Fuck.
Yeah, you've got that as well, S3.
Yeah.
So that was a bit obvious. But no, I'd like to see him in different colors, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Ferrari. I'd love to see Williams make a jump up as well, and then big surprise, Adrian Newey, Christian Horner, after Helmut Marko quits, a bunch of people go from Red Bull to Williams, and then Max joins them as well, and then within a year or two he makes that team into a winning team.
Yeah,
that would be epic.
That will make him the GOAT.
Yeah,
that is why I consider Michael to be the GOAT as well.
So you can have Ferrari then. Yes, I've picked Williams now.
For me the pick was Max needs to. There were two actually. I'd kept one as spare because I thought there was a possibility that something might clash between the two of us. Mm-hmm. So yes, even I had picked that, and for me it was not any other team. He has to win it with Ferrari, because if he wins with any other team, I don't think it counts. Let's be fair, because winning in Ferrari is arguably the toughest task since 1980.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's been only one driver that has done that consistently, and that's Michael Schumacher. And we are basically going back 4 decades.
I think Lauda had a few as well.
Not from 1980. Lauda won in 1975 and 77. So that's why. And at that point in time, the team was still a bit politically, it was still under control because Ferrari was still pretty aware of how things were happening. And since 1980, things kind of got out of hand for him. So yeah, that is what I want Max to do. Anyhow, we'll keep this one aside. There's one thing that I actually had in mind, and this comes down to the longevity of the career. Now, when you talk about Lewis, okay, when we talk about this whole GOAT list, there are drivers like Michael, there's Prost, there's Senna, there's Lewis, Alonso, and maybe to an extent Lauda as well falls in that category. But the thing is, for most of these drivers, one thing that stands out is the longevity of their careers. So when you talk about Alonso, he's been there for 20 years. Lewis has been there for, I think it will be his 16th season. Michael was there for roughly the same. He came in 91, 92 and retired in, he had 17, 18 seasons. For Max to be considered the GOAT, he needs to have at least 15 seasons. So that basically means going beyond his 2028 contract that he has right now. Yeah. So that is what I would want to see from him. And probably it will, he came in 2010. So he needs to be on the grid until 2030. Beyond that, he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, Max joined in 2015.
Yeah.
But that's not going to happen. Because
You think so?
If I know one thing is that Max is disciplined and he says what he does and he does what he says. You know. He might be persuaded if the Red Bull is very competitive in 2028 and it looks good for 2029. You know, he might stick it for another year. But I think he'll be a man of his word and do something else. Because he talks about it so often, about wanting to look after a family and do other stuff, and I sort of feel for him because he's a completely normal guy. That's what he wants to be anyway, and he can't even go to a restaurant without people wanting to take selfies with him and do autographs.
How big is Max in Netherlands?
Yeah, I know. Over here, he can't. He can't walk outside without getting, mobbed by people.
Wow.
And that's in most countries in Europe. I think he said in an interview once that he loves going to the States because people didn't recognize him there. But yeah, with the
now they do. Now everyone does. He's mentioned a lot. If you would have noticed, in American podcasts, he gets mentioned a lot. Yeah. Earlier, it used to be Lewis.
Yeah, of course, the guy who's winning gets the most attention.
Yeah. And that has been the case with him. I don't think he retires in 28.
I think he does.
You know why? Remember when you were 25?
Yeah.
Remember how many plans you'd made?
It's not that long ago.
Remember how many plans we'd make about our lives? Okay, 4 years down. A 5-year plan was something that we tend to do.
Yeah, when I was
that is what Max is doing
I
right
said
now.
I was going to be a millionaire by the time I was 30.
Yeah.
And then
Even I did.
And then I said I was going to be by the time I'm 40.
I think that's what I'm going to do as well.
Yeah, but I'm 46 now, so yeah.
Maybe 50.
I'm not going to be a millionaire. Well, not in euros anyway.
Ah, that's also the thing.
What's your money?
Rupees.
Rupees.
Yeah.
You can be a millionaire in rupees. That's not difficult, is it?
No, it's not.
How many euros is 1 million?
Okay, I think
rupees?
would be I think it's 80 the exchange rate, something like this. $1 euro is equal to 80 rupees.
Okay.
Something like that. Okay. So it would be 125,000. Or probably 12500, something like this. So yeah, it's easier to put it.
You're a millionaire.
Simply. Not yet.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. What was I saying? Oh yeah, by the way, coming to the whole retirement thing, I don't think it's happening. The reason why I don't think it is happening is because I've seen the careers of all these elite drivers. I've seen Alonso do the same shtick in 2005. I've seen Lewis do the same thing, and he was quite vocal about retiring by 34, 35 and starting his own band, by the way. He didn't do that. Seb was arguably one of the anomalies on this front because he wanted to drive forever. He loved the sport, and he's the first one who's left.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to these drivers at this age, when success comes this early, usually they sit back and try to reevaluate how life would be on the other side, whether the grass is greener or not. More often than not, it's not. And that is where I think Max tends to sit down and he analyzes everything. If you would have noticed, he made these comments until Baku. Since then, he has really taken a step back from all that. He's been entirely focused on racing, and probably that was the last time Perez beat him as well. He went back and probably Joss had a lot of things to say.
I think I've seen short videos with him, getting interviewed by Americans saying the same thing, and it's not that long ago.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's probably because
But you
he's
see,
fast, right?
do you remember when Ricciardo and Max Verstappen, they had this fight before the race in
Austria.
Azerbaijan, I think.
Before the race, or
Yeah.
oh,
No, during qualifying, they had made an agreement that one
that's
race
Austria.
was it Austria? Well, there was
Yeah.
one race where during the qualifying, one would punch a hole in the air, and the other one would follow, and then the
Yeah.
next race, the other one would do it.
Yeah.
So Max is sitting behind, and he's like, "Why is Daniel slowing down?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Just go past him." And he goes, "No, I won't." I said,
Yeah.
"Max, just go past him." "No, I won't." It's discipline, and that is something that Jos has
Ingrained in him.
Yes,
Yeah.
that you stick to what you say and what you do, no matter what. And
Yeah.
he was an 18-year-old. Well, he was maybe 18 or 19, and
Yeah.
he
2018.
he
It was
didn't care
2018.
who he had in front of him. This is
Yeah.
what the deal was, and you can't go
Yeah.
back on this deal.
Yeah. No, that's fine. What you're saying is actually correct.
So when he's saying, in his discipline, that he's going to retire after 2028, then I think he will.
He's not really said that he's going to retire after 2028. He said he'll probably retire.
Oh, he says, I have a contract till 2028, and then we'll see. But I don't
Yeah.
want to do this until I'm 40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he won't.
And
he won't do it till
said, and he added, I want to see how competitive the car is as well. So
that's also a big question. Because
So,
almost
if-
every
if-
team's competitiveness goes like this.
yeah. See, do you want to talk about the 26 regulations?
Yeah, what about it? Tell me.
What I've heard is that it's going to be a lot of focus on the engine again.
Is it?
Yes, you have the MGA, the MGH.
Basically, it's 50% IC and 50% electric,
and
right?
The other, there's one part of the battery that is dropped, and they
That's
increased
MGUH.
H. Yes,
Yeah,
but there's another part that they've
that is still
increased,
there.
which makes the cars really heavy, and Horner's
Yeah,
been on about it.
batteries are
and-
increased.
and Max has been on about it because he says the way we're driving with that car, it means you have to,
Basically, lift off on the straights to recharge.
you have to go back a gear to so it looks like the engine manufacturers are going to be they're going to have an advantage. Ferrari builds their own engines, Mercedes, well, I was going to say Renault builds their own engines, but I'm not afraid of them. And then it's all, we need to figure out if Red Bull powertrains is going to be any good. So if Red Bull powertrains engine is disappointing, then that could also be a reason for Max to say, I'm sorry guys, but my contract is up and I'm gone.
Yeah, it could happen. Look, I pretty much expect the 2026 season to be the one where Red Bull falls back a little.
Yeah.
Because every time there's a new regulation, you can see that happening.
But,
And that's
I wouldn't be surprised if the whole Red Bull team is going to be completely different by the time in 5 years' time, because Mateschitz died, Helmut Marko is 80, so
yeah,
he could retire.
he'll be gone
any minute. Christian Horner allegedly had a deal with Ferrari until he had to tell Helmut Marko, and the two.
He
of
had
them,
he was contacted by Ferrari, but the thing is, it's come to a point where no one wants to touch Ferrari anymore.
Yeah, but Horner
team
had a
was-
deal with Ferrari. He was going to go there.
He had contact,
and then he told Marco, and
and
Marco
they sat all night.
and Marco and him sat all night, and it cost him several million more, and he stayed. But the fact that Christian Horner is open for that sort of thing, it's telling. So the big boss is gone. The big advisor, he will be gone. Christian Horner is open for other adventures. Max Verstappen might retire. That team's going to be completely different in 5 years' time from now.
I think Horner takes the role that Jean Todt had. He will be the FIA president by the next 5 years.
Okay. Yeah.
The reason being,
I don't see him going to the FIA. He's too much into cars to do that. But
he'll still be into the cars only, right? But the thing is, when it comes to the political clout, that's the path that Jean Todt pretty much, he created for everyone. He was I think he led Ferrari for a decade or so, got them all those titles and led the revival. And then he left for a bigger job. Pretty much because politically that's how everyone goes.
Yeah.
You grow either it will be Toto Wolff or either it will be Horner. It will be one of those two that take over this role. It will be interesting to see who does. I think you're right. 5 years down the line, who the hell knows what's going to happen? But yeah, you're right. It will be a different grid by then. I'm only excited about one driver that might make his way through the field, through the junior ranks. Kimi Antonelli apparently is very good.
Yeah.
I've just heard his name. I've seen a bit of his races in Freca, but still an unfinished product.
There's a few names buzzing around like that. Oliver Behrman.
He's good. He's very good.
And then Vesti, Mercedes Junior.
He's not good.
No.
No. Not as in he's a decent driver, but he'll pretty much go the same path that Dragovic did. He'll be a reserve driver for Mercedes next season, and then he'll go to Formula E, pretty much the graveyard of Formula 1 drivers. Yeah. I don't see anything else happening for him because he's decently impressive, but whatever I've seen, he's not your next world champion. Maybe Teo Pourchaire is. He's currently leading the Formula 2 championship.
That's another name you hear a lot.
Yeah. There's Jack Doohan, Mick Doohan's son. Yeah. Mick Doohan is basically the Senna of MotoGP. The two-wheelers.
Mm-hmm.
So he might, but again, he's from Alpine. Who the hell knows what goes on with Alpine?
Yeah.
That's all. Okay, one question before we wrap this thing up. Because we basically consumed all the content with what was there. Tell me something about Alpine. Where the hell do you think that team goes? What's wrong with it, and how will you try to fix it? These are the two things that I want to know.
The first thing that was wrong with it is pretty much what's wrong with Ferrari at the times, most of the time as well, is that there's the car brand, and then there's the Formula 1 department, and they're not in line with each other.
Yeah.
And the way to solve that is if the brand gives certain good people carte blanche to run the F1 department.
Okay.
This is what happened with Red Bull. Helmut Marko got sort of a load of money from Mateschitz, bought a racing team, put the Red Bull sticker on it, and build it. Started bringing better and better people in.
Yeah.
And I think the success you were talking about with Schumacher was also they brought in a load of non-Italians, and they ran it their way. Schumacher ran it his way, and it worked. Because as soon as you get these the meatballs, if you get them in, things get they turn out to be a Ferrari pit stop instead of a Red Bull pit stop.
Yeah.
A lot of chaos.
That's true. So how would you fix it? If I put it as in, what changes will you make? So simply as in, who will you bring in?
You hire one good leader.
Who?
You give I don't know who.
That's the whole problem with that team.
Prost.
Yeah, but Prost has a very poor record as a team principal. He had his own team, and pretty much it went back.
I know, but if he becomes the big advisor, the Helmut Marko role,
he should have been there. Yes, exactly. Something
but
that Nicky did with Mercedes.
Laurent Rossi, he chased everybody away.
Okay, what's your take on the way they fired Alan Permain and Otmar Zafnar?
Yeah, it's just shameful, you know.
Exactly. Because the thing is, what apparently is coming out, I think I'll remember that quote for pretty much to the end of my life. What Otmar said: "You can't get 9 women pregnant and expect a baby in 1 month." And
to which I said, I would try anyway.
Oh God. But the thing is, he was, and I think it comes down to that thing only. He was promised 100 race plan.
Yeah.
That he was told that, okay, you have 5 years, build this team in the perfect manner that you can. And he went ahead with that. Then all of a sudden, in the very second year of that 5-year plan, they're questioning him why they're not winning. I mean, we're supposed to win at least by 3rd or 4th or 5th year. You're asking me in the 2nd year, and it didn't make sense. And he was kind of right on his. Okay, another, by the way, cutting this short, another thing, does Alpine need a star driver to be successful?
Yeah, I don't know who said that last week.
Cyril Abiteboul.
Cyril Abiteboul, yeah. Well, he's probably a bit sore because he was dumped as well by Renault.
Yeah.
At the minute, it doesn't matter who you put in that car.
Exactly.
You know, like Max could go there, and then the results would get a little bit better, but
probably snatch a podium here and there.
Yeah.
But that's all.
That would make a difference now. You know.
Yeah. True.
You need to grow from the top down.
Exactly. And okay, by the way, just before we end, one thing. Top 3 driver performances this season. Top 3. The entire weekend, I'm saying. As in, take the qualifying and the race as well.
I think number 3, Alonso. Number 2, Hamilton.
For a weekend, Wimbo, for a weekend.
What
particular weekend? Pick a particular, for instance, for Max, I think.
Listen, I don't even know what I had for dinner yesterday. Where was the last race? Spa,
yeah.
Max is always number 1.
Max at Spa was stunning, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was so demoralizing for Sergio as well. Getting dumped 22 seconds in 27 laps in the same car. Jeez, that was bad.
But you know, the demoralization of Perez happened in Miami. When Max started what was it?
P9,
and just blasted past him.
Yeah.
Max
True,
said,
that was also.
Max said that in Baku he discovered something in the way of setup, in the way of driving, that could save his tires and could make him go fast. And even though he finished second that race, he was happy. And after that, you know, Perez never came close.
I think Max was also too distracted in Baku. He was fighting with everyone. He was not happy about the sprint weekend. I think he criticized the weekend every time he had a mic put in front of him.
Yeah.
He fought with Russell, and he was focused on too many other things than the main part, the race, and that kind of costed him.
Yeah, but I saw a little interview with him where he said the best race this season
just recently, no?
To me was
I covered it.
Was Baku, because I discovered
he called it his best weekend of the season.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a win.
No. But that also shows what he's like.
I agree.
You know?
Yeah.
So, but the Spa weekend, who was good in qualifying and had a good race result?
I think it was...
Leclerc had a really good qualifying
was good.
and he ended up on a podium. So
I was a bit surprised by one thing, by the way, about Spa. The power ranking, if you would have seen.
I don't watch power rankings.
Yeah, I don't. That is one of the reasons why I started doing my own, because that one is basically a popularity contest. And they, yeah.
Yeah, it's the
And
driver of the day. Driver of the day is the
Sergio
same.
Perez. Start last, finish 10th. Made up 10 places in a Red Bull. So, yeah. So, talking about that power ranking, they had Lewis Hamilton as the second best driver in Spa. I I mean, again, I can't fathom it. He was not on the podium. He had that penalty with Sergio. How is he better than what possibly
Now,
Charles did?
you mentioned the penalty. That's something I'd like to discuss.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, okay, hear me out. For
Yeah.
years, Max has been getting a bad reputation for dirty driving and aggressive driving,
Yeah.
but I've never seen him put holes in other drivers' cars. You know, he had that reputation all the way back to 2018, 2019,
Yeah.
you know, but I've never seen big consequences of what he did. Now, if I say this on Twitter, people will show me.
Okay. Wait.
They will show me the picture of
wait.
Monza.
Let me let me correct you. 2018, China.
Yeah, I know. That's how he got the reputation. But you know, he didn't. He saw a gap and he stuck it in the middle of Seb's car.
Both Seb as well as Lewis. I think there were two offs in
Two
that.
incidents, yes.
Yeah.
But
And I think yeah.
But anyway,
But the thing is, it was too early. Yeah.
You know, and now the last 2 seasons, Max has been battling with Mick Schumacher. I think that was Hungary when he had a damaged car, and you know, people were like, "Oh, that was dirty driving because he kept pushing Mick off the road." And
Okay. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all
You're talking
these-
about Silverstone. Yeah.
yeah, all these incidents where Max was just making himself big, taking the corners the way he likes it, giving others no chance. It was all dirty driving, yes? And basically they wanted Max to have a penalty for that because, you know, it could have gone bad. Now, in 2 occasions, yes, Max gets his car damaged by Russell
Yeah.
in Baku.
Yeah.
And Russell didn't get a penalty, and people were saying, yeah, Max shouldn't complain because he's an aggressive driver. But then again, he never puts holes in other people's cars, especially not the last 4 years. Okay, then Hamilton puts a hole in Perez's car and retires him. And people are like, why is he getting a penalty for that? Well, obviously, if you damage the other person's car,
Did you see
went
my tweet
over
on
a
this?
limit. You went over a limit.
Did you see my tweet on this?
No.
You know this guy, Bryson Sullivan.
Yeah.
Natural Paradigm something, whatever his handle is. So he wrote, Lewis is treated differently. I lost my head. I mean, the man has more than 40,000 followers, and he's basically bringing race into something like this when there's no need to.
No.
It was utter rubbish. Derek Warwick was basically, he was abused by all the Lewis Hamilton fans. I actually make it a point to cover it on my website. Every time there is an online abuse, most of the websites, they miss it. On Sportskeeda, I have made it a point. First, it happened with Derek Warwick. We covered it. Then it was discovered that Derek Warwick was the only one who said Lewis should not have been given a penalty. And no Lewis Hamilton fan, then no one came out and said, we apologize for whatever we did.
No.
Everyone went ahead with, oh, he has a Honda dealership. That is why he did that. I'm like, what the fuck? A Honda dealership. And yeah.
But the
And then
point I was trying
Yeah.
to make is that, you know, Max does his usual driving. No accidents happen. It's dirty driving. 2 Mercedes drivers put holes in other Red Bull cars. Side pods. No action should be taken. And it's just,
tell you
it's
one
just
thing.
plain unfair.
I'll tell you one thing. Stop listening or reading to accounts which have 44 or 103 written on them. 9 out of 10 times they are the ones that are doing all this crap.
Yeah, but
secondly, British media is biased.
Yeah.
And make peace with it, because I have.
Yeah.
And
but I like to moan about it.
I mean, yeah, even I do sometimes. But I mean, I have got into pretty heated interactions with quite a few of them. But the thing is, more often than not, I try to. The replies are predictable. The reactions are predictable.
Yeah.
And the moaning is predictable as well from them. Every race, I know what they're going to do. The thing is, there's one very simple way to deal with all of this. You need to know what really happened. Okay, by the way, in my view, I would not have given Lewis penalty for that one. For his contact with Sergio, because I thought it was a racing incident. I mean, if it was given a penalty, I'm fine with it. It's a 50-50. It's basically a 50-50 thing where either he could have been penalized or not. I was fine.
It was 100% penalty. No, because, like, I'm not saying Lewis did it on purpose. That has nothing to do with it.
He lost control of his car, and it basically...
He put one tire on the curb, and he had to adjust that. And in adjusting that, he just moved over slightly, and that put him against Perez's car, who was just taking his corner as normal. But nobody told Lewis to put his wheel on a slippery curb.
True.
So
no,
it's
that's
100%.
Fine.
100%. It does. The intent doesn't matter. Bottas didn't intend to take out 6 drivers in Hungary, but he got a penalty for it.
Yeah.
a grid penalty. So
no, I understand. No, that's understandable. I mean, I was either way. I was fine either ways. But I think that is where the whole thing comes in. How the hell does Lewis get awarded the second best driver on the grid, if that is the kind of weekend he has put together?
Yeah.
And that is why I always say that all these power rankings, they are basically a popularity contest.
Well, I actually think that if you want to get good traction on one of these power rankings, then you put at least one driver too high, and you put one
too low.
driver way too low, and then people discuss it underneath.
That's basically Ed Straw's formula, pretty much throughout his. Since his autosport days, he's been doing pretty much the same thing.
No slandering of the race, okay?
You're a huge fan?
I love the race.
Yeah.
They're my number one.
In terms of coverage, it is very impressive, the work that they do.
I just wish I could be as good as Scott Mitchell, man. He's a legend.
Seriously? You're a huge fan of the guy?
Yep.
Oh, impressive.
What?
I mean, yeah,
You don't like him?
No, I'm good with him.
Well, I'll click away,
No, for me, the whole thing is the kind of info that they provide. It helps me a lot. So that's where I think Scott, even recently with the whole the Alpine debacle, Scott had quite a few interesting points that he made. He's the one actually who's basically covering Alpine through and through. So he had what you call a journalist's point of view, a reporter's point of view. They were quite interesting. So yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, the coverage and all is fine. What happened in 2021, it pissed me off because the whole thing leaned towards Lewis, and I was not a huge fan of how they were conducting themselves at the time.
I think I may have missed those videos on purpose by accident.
Yeah. Okay. So this was a fun little podcast. We talked about Max. We talked about
talked about Max.
Yeah. And then we talked about whose fault is it when it comes to how the regulations have been. And we talked about other things as well. So yeah, Wimbo, thanks for being there.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And
it was a good time.
People, if you watch this podcast and you enjoyed what I brought to the podcast, then please consider subscribing to my channel too, because I'm working hard to reach 1K, and with 1K I can monetize my channel, which is my goal. So thank you for watching.
And Wimbo's handle and everything, I'll add it in the description, so you can pick it up, follow his channel, subscribe to his channel, follow his content, it's fun. If you are a Red Bull and Ferrari fan, oh sorry, Red Bull and Max Verstappen fan, you're probably going to love it.
No,
So yeah,
I love 9 teams on the grid.
yeah. Thanks, Wimbo. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Bye bye.